for that. And the scary part for my mom was the same day that she found out she was pregnant with me was the same exact day that my dad found out that he had tested positive for HIV.
Wow. I'm like, what are you talking about? We grew up in the same house. We're both Christian. What do you mean? No, it's different. And like, I saw so much the change that was in him.
Welcome to the Snipe Life, where we look at creativity through the lens of Christianity. And today is, it's not the Snipe Life, guys. This is a different channel completely.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
It's called something about podcasting.
So this is a new channel where we're doing podcasts. So what does that mean? It means we have longer form content. We're going to be talking about deep stuff. And so these episodes are all going out to our Patreon early, our Patreon and our channel members. And so, hey, what's up, Patreon and channel members? Thank you so much for your support. You guys are the ones that keep this thing running.
Yeah,
and
we love
keep
you
us
so
doing,
much.
Videos and all that. And so really excited about this new channel and kind of the things that we can talk about and get into.
Yeah.
And so if you wouldn't mind, since this is a new channel, please subscribe, like, share, send it out to people. Eventually these videos will be public to everybody. And so when that happens, we want to be able to grow the channel and have a different place to share with you guys. But this is a sneak peek. So a little bit early access.
You guys are so special.
Always awesome. So we wanted to be able to give you guys some more value for supporting us. And so this is that. But our last episode was all about a bunch of crazy stuff. Today's going to be a little bit lighter, luckily. So today we're going to be talking about us.
Yeah.
My name is Brandon, by the way, if you don't know me.
Yeah.
And who are you?
I'm Vanessa. I am the wife of Brandon. Not a sibling. We seem to get that.
Yeah.
Often.
Some people think we're siblings. I don't think it's super often, but
we do mess around a lot. I kind of get it, but at the same time, you're my husband.
So yeah, today we're going to be talking about kind of our testimonies and a little bit just about what's going on in life. Who are we? What do we do? How did we start YouTube? All that kind of stuff. And so we're just going to sit back, relax, dive into it a little bit. You want to start? You want me to start?
You start, because then I can know how I should do this.
Okay, so I'll give you some background on me. My name is Brandon. So I grew up in Massachusetts, actually. So my whole family, my whole extended family is mostly still in Massachusetts. They're kind of all spread around the United States a little bit, in Oklahoma and some other places, but primarily most of my family lives in Massachusetts. And so, I grew up there until I was 8 or 9, and then my dad actually got a job here in Central Florida at Southeastern College at the time, which is the university that I ended up attending and graduating from. So Southeastern University is where I went to college. And so anyway, we moved here and went through a bunch of different stuff. But my family has always kind of been Christian since I was a kid. And so, I've always kind of had that faith in a lot of ways. My grandma, I'm one of those kids that prayed with my grandma when I was 5, right? And that's kind of where everything came from.
Yeah.
But I had some turmoil earlier on, even before I was born, because my biological dad was heavily involved in drugs and alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And so his name was Steven, and before I was born, he really struggled with addiction, period. So whether that was alcohol or drugs or, sex addiction, that kind of stuff, he struggled with a lot of stuff like that. And so, I only have a few memories of my dad because he ended up actually getting HIV and testing positive for that. And the scary part for my mom was the same day that she found out she was pregnant with me was the same exact day that my dad found out that he had tested positive for HIV.
Wow.
And so, my mom, obviously, coming from a Christian background and being a Christian herself, she was trying to live through this. And while she wasn't perfect, I'm sure, throughout all that time, she really struggled through this time. They sent him off to rehab, and while she was pregnant with me, she's praying every single night that she wouldn't contract HIV and that I wouldn't contract HIV. And it was a really crazy time for her, I'm sure. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But for 9 months, she really prayed and sought out God and was like, please, let my baby be all right. And eventually, as we got through I was fine, you know, no HIV, nothing like that. So it was really, really good. And, you know, but at that point, my dad was really estranged from us for the most part. He wasn't around very much for the first couple of years of my life. And then when I was 3 is when my parents got a divorce, actually, like, you know, after a long separation and stuff. And so that part of my life, I think, really shaped who I am today, being growing up fatherless and growing up, you know, with this kind of turmoil, even though I didn't really recognize what everything was at the time. I think it really shaped who I was, right? And so for me, it was like, man, I started to look back as I grew in my faith and as I grew as a person, as a man, like all of these things that affected me. And I was like, oh, that's why I do that. Or, oh, that's why I am the way that I am. And so that really, really affected me. But the HIV eventually progressed. And like I said, we moved down to Florida after my mom remarried and my stepdad got a job here in Florida. And the year that we moved down, I'm pretty sure, is the year that my dad died, or the year after. I think I was in 4th grade. And my dad, we got a call that my dad had died, and I didn't really understand, because remember, I only have like a couple of memories of my dad, and so he's a very estranged, sort of like, in a way, like evil figure, you know? And so like I remember him coming into our house and like stealing stuff, and like those are like kind of some of the memories that I had, and so really not a great guy overall. And so, you know, my mom answered the phone, we eventually go to the funeral, which is with the black side of my family, and I've only met them like twice, like 2 or 3 times now, it was an interesting experience for me because I wasn't quite sure like what I was supposed to do, you know, like
what the proper response would be,
right? Like in some ways, I was almost like a celebrity because all these people had like heard of me, but they hadn't really like met me. And this was, you know, my dad that had just died. So obviously we're the center of attention, and all the aunts and uncles and stuff are coming and talking to us and introducing themselves, or, you know, coming and saying like, oh, I haven't seen you since you were a pea, blah, 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 you know, like, you know, and all this stuff. And, I remember
you were what?
A pea, like a small, you know, small children.
Never heard that said ever.
But yeah, so yeah, I just remember like we got in like a limo and like we drove to the funeral and that, and it was just like a bunch of craziness. But I remember being at the funeral and sitting in the front row with my mom, and my mom's just crying, right, just like bawling her eyes out. And I remember looking up at her, and I was like, I asked her, I was like, Mom, why are you crying? You know, I'm in like 4th grade at this point, right? Like maybe 3rd grade at this point. I'm really young. Yeah. It was like the year that we moved down to Florida. So I'm like, Mom, why are you crying? Because I didn't understand, right? Like in my mind, this is like a bad guy that like hasn't been in our lives in a long time anyway. And it's like, you know, at least from my 3-year-old, or not 3-year-old, but 3rd grade perspective, you know, it's like, I didn't understand at all why she would be upset, you know, and, stories came out, like rumors came out that he like became a Christian on his deathbed and stuff like that. And I don't know what I believe about all of that, but, I also trust God in all of it too, you know, that whatever was supposed to happen happened. But yeah, it's a, that kind of set up my life, the foundation of my life for a lot of different things. And so for me, yeah, that was just a big part of why I became who I became. And so I grew up at, you know, having this Christian kind of foundation from my mom, really, really strong faith, you know, through not having money or, you know, not having a place to stay or whatever it happened to be. And as we moved down to Florida, eventually we got to the point when I was in like 7th grade where my parents were looking for a new church. And so for me, I really wanted a steady place to go. And so I would go over my friend Davis's house every single weekend. I would go over there because he was my best friend at the time, and because I really liked his church. That's where we met. The first place was the youth group there. And so it was Church of the Highlands was the name of the church, which is basically the church that we go to now, which I'm a pastor at now, kind of merged into this new church that we're part of. But Church of the Highlands was a big part of my journey as well. And so as I'm going into Church of the Highlands, you know, every single weekend I'm over at Davis's house. I, you know, go over on Friday. I sleep over Saturday, sleep over Sunday. And then Sunday morning we go to church so that I can go to Church of the Highlands.
Yeah.
And I just got super committed to it. Like without my parents, without anybody else, like I was just like really, you know, I'm here for it. You know, whatever God wants me to do, that's what I'm going to do.
Why?
I think some of it came from conferences and stuff that we went to. So we did like Acquire the Fire every year, which really brought me to a place of like, oh, this is real. Right. And I have to do this. Like this is a real place. I started going because my brother went there first because he had a really good friend, Carl, who was like part of the church. And so my brother went there, I went there, and then I met Davis, and then me and Davis became best friends, and then I just slept over his house every single weekend so I could go to church with them. And so yeah, it became my whole life essentially. Like
So you started going because of friendship?
Yeah, for sure.
And then it became something that you...
Well, I started going to church on Sunday morning with them because of friendship, yeah.
Okay.
But I thought it was important as well. Like, I really liked the church, and obviously my friends were there, but I went primarily because of the church. Like, so I even had arguments with my mom because just like any good family, you want your church to go to you want your family to go to church together, right?
To the same church,
And so we would have arguments, like legit arguments at home, and she would be like, no, you can't sleep over his house because I want you to come to church with us on Sunday. And I'm like, but Mom, go on, like blah blah blah. And we ended up making like a deal where I could go to my church, right, like half of the month, and then I would go with her to they went to a church called Trinity Presbyterian, and so I would go to church with them for 2 weeks out of the month. And so it was like this trade-off that we ended up making, and eventually it fell apart, and I would just go to Church of the Highlands every single weekend, you know. but yeah, it was really interesting. I think this is really where my faith began to grow, and where I began to be who I am now, right? Having the hunger that I have and having the foundation of faith that I have really, I think, came from all of that, because we had a really, really strong youth group where we were the leaders of the church in a lot of ways. And we led a lot of the projects and different things that we were doing. And the youth really became central to who I was as a person. And so that's when I ended up learning music and all of that stuff. And so, you know, I always second guessed my story because I didn't have like this crazy, like, go wild and party and then kind of come back.
Right.
It was never that for me, ever. Yeah. And so I always kind of second guess myself because all of these strong Christian leaders, right, they have this story of like, our dog is barking. I don't know if you can hear that. They have this crazy story of like, oh, I went and I was the leader of 12 gangs, and then and then I bombed a hospital, but then I came back to Christ, you know? Like,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
But that's what it feels like, you know? Where it's like, at least to me, like that's what it always felt like when a guest speaker would come and they'd be like, oh, I had this horrible life and I did all these horrible things, but then I came to Christ, right? And while I wasn't perfect, right? I never did everything right? There was never a point in my life when I just completely walked away, you know, or there was never a point in my life. I mean, since I was like 5, I feel like where I didn't know that I know that I know that Christ is real and God is real and he's who I serve, you know? And so for many, many years, I kind of discounted my story, but I think now that I'm older, you know, I'm 29 now, and I think to myself, like, God has blessed me so much. Yeah. Because of the way that my life has gone, you know, because of the choices that I've made and the way that he's led me through them and the things that I've just been obedient to. Right. Yeah.
Have you ever felt tempted to like either walk away or deconstruct or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it really comes down to like straight up foundation. Like beyond everything else, I know that God is there and he listens to me, and like I don't think I've ever been tempted in that way, for sure.
Have you ever questioned?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think we all have doubts and we all have to go through different seasons of that, but I don't think I've ever like been like tempted to be like, let's just walk away. Let's just see what this looks like if we do this instead. Because I've seen the goodness of God, I think. Yeah. You know?
And it's truth. Like for me, like there's no way, because it's the truth.
Yeah. And I've just experienced it for so long now. Like there are just so, like we talk about all the time in our marriage too, right? Where we have these things called anchors. And so an anchor for us is like, if you're really upset with me, right? And I'm like, I cannot believe she's doing this. Like how, like, this is the most, this is the most horrible day of my life. Like, you know, real marriage stuff when you really get into it. Like for me, the anchors are times like this when we get to sit down and do a podcast, or you know, times when you're just being like silly and funny, and it's like I can remember those times in order for us to kind of reconcile and come back to where we need to be. And so I have the same anchors for God, right? And while I don't have perfect memory and I can't remember every single little thing that he does, and I can't feel that feeling again when he's done that for me, I know that there are these moments when God came in and it's like nobody but God could have done that. And our YouTube channel is one of those things, right? Which I want to get into later. But yeah, so my story is more a story of gradually kind of coming closer to the foot of Christ, you know?
It's a story of faith.
Yeah. And perseverance, I think.
Yeah.
But your story is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Your story is just a little bit different. Share with us a little bit about what you've gone through and how you came to be in the relationship with Christ that you have.
Yeah, I think growing up, I thought I grew up in a Christian house, you know? Like I remember going to church and having, going to, what's it called? Children's church? Yeah.
Like Sunday school or?
Yeah, Sunday school. It would always be myself and my dad. Like it wouldn't be like a family event. It would just be me and my dad. Yeah. Sometimes my brother and sister would go, but not really. Especially because they're 10 and 8 years older than me. So they were teenagers, you know, like, so anyway, and then, in high school, I kind of started going to a youth group, but when I was like 17 or 18, I literally prayed, hey God, I want to have fun. I'll come back to you after, which is the stupidest and biggest regret of my life, you know? And so like I went down the path of partying and clubbing and drinking underage and
but before that point, like when you're, you know, 13, 14, 15 or even younger, like what were your thoughts about God in general?
I thought I was a Christian. My whole life I thought I was a Christian. So like I didn't want to have sex until I got married. Like things that I held on to some Christian values.
Yeah.
So I feel like God's always been in my life, right? It's just whether I was being obedient or not. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So when I became like, I don't know, it was like I started partying and everything when I was like 18, 19. And then when I was like 21 or 22, I don't remember, 2011, I think is what it was. My brother started calling me and like he became a Christian. And then he was like, dude, I need to tell you this. Like, I just found Christ. And like, I'm like, what are you talking about? We grew up in the same house. We're both Christian. What do you mean? No, it's different. And like, I saw so much the change that was in him because he was also like a partier and like a crazy dude, right? Like, but seeing the difference, it was like night and day, right? Like he was calmer and like he didn't cuss as much, you know, like simple things like that I started reading the Bible. And my journey actually started with me Googling where did God come from, right? And that took me on a journey of apologetics and like really trying to figure out the whys, the whys, right, of behind of Christianity. So
yeah, because you're a very logical person, right?
Yeah.
Like we both are in a lot of ways where it's like A plus B equals C, and that's the way that it is.
Right.
Like, and God, luckily, is a very logical God as well, right? Where there's a lot of things that make clear sense if you actually look, right? And if you actually search and if you actually see.
Yeah.
And so it just took a little bit of that for you to really dive into it, right?
Yeah, because I was definitely on a journey to find truth, right? Like, in my craziness, I moved to Alabama to try to get away from some of the craziness. And while I was there, I was like really trying to find truth, right? But I had friends that were a little crazy and into some weird things. And I started wanting to go down that path. I started believing that all paths led to Christ. That's the belief that I started having.
Kind of like New Agey.
Yeah. Never full-fledged New Age, but yeah, definitely like New Agey.
And was that just like a surface level thing? Like, oh, I just kind of believe this, like it's not a big deal? Or were you like really adamant about it?
In the middle. It was kind of surface level, but at the same time, like I was reading these books that were feeding me this same logic, you know, of a New Age God, of a universal God, which is not the true God, you know?
Yeah.
So I created a God in my own image. And then, with my brother and the apologetics and everything, I was like, I came to know God by reading my Bible. You know, like it wasn't an altar call. Like I know that people have those types of things, but for me, it was in my room reading. I don't even remember what I was reading, either Romans or John. And I was like, yeah, I was all in, you know, at that point. And my brother kept calling me almost every day. Almost every day he would call me. So like he like slowly discipled me, at least in the beginning. And then I knew that I needed to get further away from my like lifestyle that I was having. So my family just happened to buy a house in in Polk County, and I moved in with them. It was a repossessed. What's it called?
Yeah, repossessed house.
Yeah, it was a repossessed house, and it looked like junk, and I wanted to help as much as I could, and because I had that newfound like love and like overflow of that love, so I really wanted to help as much as I could. And the best part of my story, I think, is when I had a dog and I was looking for a dog crate, and I kept reading my Bible, but I didn't want anything to do with the church. But as I kept reading my Bible, I kept seeing that I needed a church. So with this dog, I needed a crate, and I looked on Craigslist, right? And as I was, this guy, I didn't get a response. He calls me back. It was a Sunday. It was like noon. I messaged them like at 8 a.m. or something. But then he didn't get back to me till like noon, and he's like, sorry, we were at church or whatever. But you can come check it out. And I go and I drive over there. And as I'm driving over there, I'm like praying, like, because I don't know anything about this new city that I'm in. I don't know anything about a church or anything. So like, I'm praying for a church. Please, Lord, reveal a church to me. Yeah. And the guy that I buy the crate from happens, like he says, are you from around here? I'm like, no, because he saw my area code was different. And he's like, I just happen to be a pastor. And he says, like, when he tells the story, he's like a deer in the headlights type of thing. Because I was literally praying for a church, and this guy presents, like, he's like, I'm a pastor. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, you know? Like, the only God. So, yeah, it was like all my stories since that moment, like even how I heard about the church that we go to and getting to meet you, like everything was like, those are my anchors because God clearly orchestrated it. But yeah, that's kind of my story. I want to go into more detail, but I know this
is a podcast. So we can go as into as much detail as you want. You always say I go too long. No, I don't.
Yes, you do. You always say, you take too long with that story.
Yeah, if we're like sitting and talking to someone for 5 minutes. No, you can go into more detail if you want.
Okay, so the guy ends up being a pastor and I start going there. It's a church plant. So
yeah, and they really need your help at this point, right?
Yeah, they were meeting at a park at this time. So like, it was because I needed a different church. I didn't need the regular church. So even how God presented to me a church that was completely different from the ones that I was hurt from, you know?
Yeah. And you didn't mention this, but like your mom is Catholic and your dad is like, he grew up in other realms. And at one point he was even like a pastor of a church, right? Yeah. So like you have two different realms, like where your dad's Protestant, your mom's Catholic. And so you have two different sides too. So you grew up going to mass sometimes, right? Yes. And then you grew up going to like churches sometimes. So you have like quite a wide range of like what you see church as.
Yeah. I guess that's a good point as to why also maybe I was going the universal route, because I was like seeing these stains and
trying to reconcile everything.
Right. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, you're good. But the church was exactly what you're looking for.
Oh yeah, they were meeting outside, and like the worship music was like YouTube videos and stuff, and like it was just different, and I was okay. Like I was glad with different. So there was like his family and maybe like one or two other families, but we kept growing, and then we got a building. Or we started sharing a building. I don't remember that
ended
part.
Up getting the building from like Heartland or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
it was kind of like a merger as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I started like leading worship, because the person who was leading worship, like they ended up leaving and stuff like that. So,
but you were like, you would sing with these YouTube videos, basically. Right?
No, I would sing. Oh, yeah, with some YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Well, before, there was a bit of a transition. I would sing with YouTube videos at first, and then when the lady that was leading worship, she would lead with the keyboard and stuff like that, and so then I would lead with her, and then maybe we reverted back when she left. I don't remember. I don't remember the full story.
That's what I thought you were doing, but I couldn't remember if Randy was playing acoustic and stuff with you before I got there.
I can't remember, honestly.
So we'll kind of transition now into the story of how we met, and how all of that works out. So Vanessa started going to this church, which is called Connect Church. And so while she was there, she's getting involved in ministry, and she's heavily like, just like, this is, the first couple of years of you being a Christian, like you're just on fire, like everything is super focused in that way. Like you're just getting your life together, and doing the things that you really feel like God is asking you to do. And so while you're here, you end up meeting a couple who invites you to a retreat called Tres Dias. Yep. Right. And if you're not familiar with Tres Dias, this is like, it's what's called a 4th day weekend. And so Tres Dias meaning 3 days. It's like a weekend retreat basically for adults. So if you're married, you'll go as a couple. So the man will go first and then the woman will go second. And then it's just like a weekend away with God, basically. Very, very powerful in a lot of ways.
Think also like a youth retreat.
Yeah, it's like a youth retreat on steroids.
For adults, yeah. So they saw the fire within me, and they said, you should really go to this thing. So they sponsored me through, and I met a whole bunch of people from this church called TBA. Yeah. I'm like, what the heck is a TBA? But someone that was at going through with me, she was from there, and like we got really close because it's an intense weekend. So so it's an intense weekend, and so I decided to go visit her. Like I was still really like, this is my church. Connect was my church, right? But I decided to go visit her just to see what it's like, because I heard of so many people going there. So there was this other lady who told me about a young adults ministry. Actually, it was like the second I went back to serve to this weekend thing, and the person who was leading me in this specific part of it, she told me about the young adults ministry, and I started going there, and it was really cool. Yeah.
So the young adults ministry is a ministry that I had been part of for the last few years. But then you ended up coming, and we were friends for quite a while. Like, we were friends for like a year. I thought that you had a boyfriend because your brother would drop you off. And I was like, oh, he must be like going to work or something. That's got to be like her boyfriend. Because like, I don't know, I just assumed, you know. But we had both been out of relationships for quite a while at that point, like over 2 years for each of us. And so, and so we hadn't been dating anybody. We hadn't seen anybody. At the time, I'm 19, I think, when I met you. And so, you know, I wasn't really like interested. I was just going through college and all that stuff. But then, you know, we were friends. We were doing ministry together basically for about a year. And there's a couple different things that happened within that. And, you know, God really was working on my heart and working on your heart. And, you know, in my mind, like if you were to talk to like 19-year-old me, I'm like, well, there's no way I'm ever leaving TBA. Like, this is my home. I really feel connected here. Remember, this is where I built my Christian faith, right? This is mine, right? It's not my parents. My parents don't go to this church. They don't like this church, right? Like, this is where I built it. Oh, you're probably confused if you're not following along, but Church of the Highlands, where I originally grew up, merged with another church and eventually became TBA. This is the place where I'm a pastor now. So that should all make sense now. So the church that I originally went to with my friend eventually becomes TBA Church, where me and Vanessa meet at this young adults group. And so this is the church I've been going to since I was a kid, right? And all throughout high school, this is the church that I'm a part of and all of that, and really a big part of, right? Like, I'm serving, I'm on the worship team, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, like I'm helping on every way I can. I'm the main leader of the youth group, helping everything to run and doing all that stuff. You know, like, this is my home, right? This is my family. Yeah. And so we become part of this young adults group together, and then we're friends for about a year, and you liked me after a while, right?
No. Like, it wasn't like I started liking you. Well, it was you, me, Aaron, and Ashton all hanging out, and a few others. Yeah. So when we started hanging out more and more, I got to know you. Then I started liking you. After all, like, that proximity, you know. Yeah,
but some cool moments happened where, like, you know, I would have said, like, I'm just going to stay at TBA forever. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Like, I'll get into ministry there or whatever. Like, I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I really felt like I was going to stay there for a long time. And, but then God brought me to lead a youth conference, like a kids
I think conference. I already liked you at that point because I wanted to go with you.
Yeah. Well, I got this random call one Sunday afternoon, and a guy that I kind of knew, but like not very well. He called me and he was like, hey, do you want to go and lead this kids conference? I'll pay you to go, or they'll pay you to go out there and to lead it. And I was like, when? He's like, tonight. And so I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah. You know, I was 19. I, had a car. I was like, yeah, I'll drive over there, whatever. Yeah. And I was like, I was asking all my friends, I was like, you want to go with me? Because I don't, like, I'm going all the way, like, 2-3 hours away. Like, right. I don't know anybody over there. Yeah. Like, and all my friends were like, nah.
I wanted to go.
They didn't want to go with me. So I went by myself. Vanessa did want to go with me, but obviously weren't dating or anything then. Right. So it would have been kind of weird. But yeah. I drove myself, 2 hours away and went to this conference, and it turned out great. Like, I wasn't the best worship leader, but I was pretty competent, and so I went over there and I did it. I got paid and everything, and it was great, and came back. And so Vanessa saw at that point, she's like, oh, maybe he would be interested in helping out some other churches and other things. And I've seen him do that, and they had a VBS coming up soon. And so she asked me if I would lead worship for the VBS.
But you were already at the other church, weren't you?
No.
No. You weren't?
No, not at this time.
I thought you were leaving to the other church. No. Yes, because you couldn't come back because he was already wanting to hire you on.
Yeah, but I was like, I was in talks, but I don't think I was there yet. So, because I was still at TBA, because that's when I got the call for that was like only a few weeks before you asked me.
Well, because when Stetson invited you to, you did something at that church that you were going to leave to.
Yeah, I think that was after.
And I went there.
Yeah. There was like a worship night or something. Yeah. But I think that was after.
After the VBS?
Yeah, I think that was after. No, I think that was
was before.
That was after the kids conference, but before the VBS.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, We don't know our timelines, obviously. But anyway, there's a few different events that showed Vanessa, like, hey, maybe he'd be interested in helping other ministries and stuff, not just TBA. And so she invited me to this VBS, and so I went out for that week and helped out with the VBS, and it was a ton of fun, and did worship for them and all that, and then after that point, like, the pastor basically offered me a job that week and was like, hey, I'd love for you to come and, at least let's have a conversation about it. And I was like, oh, man, sorry, because I had just been invited to go to another ministry in Plant City, where I was just about going to start there. Yeah. And so it was like, oh, man, like, God, like, what do you want me to do? Like, and I thought this was the right choice because at the time I thought I was going to get a house. I thought I was going to, be like the main worship leader and everything. Like, it was going to be a way better position. Right. I thought, right. And slowly but surely, all of these things started falling through.
And the doors started closing.
Position looked way worse and worse and worse. And it was like, oh, man, this is not good. Yeah. The church is, like, dying because the church that I was going to, like, the lead pastor left and then the youth pastor left. And so it was, like, a bunch of, like, all the elders were leaving. Like, it was not a good situation. And I think the church ended up closing down pretty quickly after that. But yeah, so I went there for a while, and then I had some more conversation with Ed, who was the pastor over at Connect, and amazing guy. Yeah. Obviously a huge influence on our lives. I miss him. And he's great. Now he's just, like, retired and on a
having
farm
the
or
life,
something.
Dude.
but yeah, so anyway, I had some conversation with him, and I ended up working at Vanessa's Church Connect for 2 years. Yeah. And so, within the first few months that we were at that church, we started dating. And then a few months after that, and we moved really, really quickly through our dating, like, era, because we only dated for 4 months, and then I asked you to marry me, and then we only dated for 5 more months after that. We were engaged for 5 months. And then we got married. So we were only together for 9 months before we got married. And yeah, we...
which makes for a rough first year.
It was a rough first year, for sure. Yeah. It was definitely rough first year. I think we'll talk about that another time. But, yeah, I always tell people, like, you couldn't pay me enough money to relive our first year, for sure. It was so hard because you were so used to living by yourself. Yeah. And I had never been independent in a lot of ways, and never had, like, my family is not the type of family that, like, tell me what to do or, like, have certain, like, expectations and stuff. While your family is, like, that's all they do. Like, all they have is expectations for you and what they want you to do and all of that. And so it was a completely different situation, right?
And I moved out when I was 19, so I've been living on my own for a while. Right. And I'm 5 years older than you, so.
4.5, but yeah.
Whatever.
So Vanessa was obviously, like, way more independent than me, kind of going into it. So it was a rough first year, but we got through it, and we're obviously still married today, luckily. And
what you mean?
But we've made it through, and we've conquered a lot, and we've grown a lot, in the last 8 years that we've been married, and it's been awesome. But anyway, eventually what happened is I worked at Connect for 2 years, and then I was offered a position back at TBA, and so that's where we are now. But yeah, so that's kind of how we met and how we got together, and that kind of brings us to YouTube, which is the last thing I want to talk about. But so YouTube started 2 years ago. So I started getting interested in videography and photography about 5 years ago. So 2017, 2016, around there. So 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know. It was just random. Like I have always loved photography.
That's true. You've always had, like, these old cameras.
Yeah, and so ever since I was a kid, my mom would always take us tag sailing, which is like yard sailing in some areas, tag sailing in some areas, garage sailing in some areas, called different things. But she would always take us tag sailing, and I would always look for these old cameras to collect. I don't know why. Like, I always just loved them and seeing them. The idea of photography to me was always really interesting. Having, like, an artful eye and looking at.
You love creativity as a whole, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely my heart. Like, that's where I lean towards, right? Which is why we love The Chosen, because it's the best example of Christian creativity that we've seen. You know, and so naturally we gravitated towards it, But yeah, so I've always loved videography and photography, and I really wanted to dive into it, but obviously I didn't have enough money to do things, and so I actually bought this camera right here that I'm looking into. That was my first my first kind of real, high level 4K, able to take pictures.
I don't remember why we even bought this camera.
It's not amazing, but it's good enough. We used it for YouTube for a long time, but we bought this camera because I thought like perhaps I could make money, but I really wanted to just take pictures of stuff and kind of get into it. I was thinking about asking your dad to inventory his furniture. So Vanessa's dad is an upholsterer. And so I was thinking about taking pictures of all of his furniture and maybe trying to help him sell some items and stuff because he had a ton of inventory at the time. And so I was like, well, I really want to do this and I think I can make money on it. So let's just try. And at the time we were doing a ministry called Sent, which is kind of like the seedling of our YouTube channel in a way.
100%.
And the ministry Sent, we did monthly open mics. And so because of that, we wanted to be able to put up YouTube videos and just show people and just kind of store them on YouTube as well. We had no idea what YouTube could do, at the time. And so, we just kind of did that. And then, so we had the equipment around and I got really into flying drones and stuff like that, which is a large part of it as well. And then I got into real estate, photography and videography, because I had the drone and I got a gimbal and was able to do real estate stuff. And so it all kind of morphed, over the years. But 2017 was the year that really everything took off and I really dove into it. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, Vanessa had been like saying for a while, like, hey, I think we should start a YouTube channel because she was really getting into these lifestyle bloggers and different people that would just like show their lives. And, she's like, man, I really think that we have something to say that we could, add to this essentially. And she didn't really know what it meant either. No. I don't think either of us did. But if you look back at our first videos, we had no idea what we were doing because we just started
Don't look
it because well, we just started it because like Vanessa wanted to start it and I was like, well, her birthday's coming up. This would be a cool gift, to kind of like just get the channel started and then we can go from there and see what comes of it.
I thought I was messing around.
Yeah. And I wasn't at the time. Like, I forget, like I took the camera and I like put it on the table.
You put it on the table and then I was like, why'd you leave that? And then he was like, so you could start the channel. And then I was like,
I wanted you to do it because I didn't want to take over. Because generally that's what happens, right? Is like I get super into something and I'm like, well, I can do it better than everybody on the planet, so why don't I just do it, And
so you did end up taking over a little bit,
but
100%.
Again, we're working into that for sure. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But I wanted you to do it though, because I wanted you to have ownership over it, because I also know that you struggle with quitting things, and so it's like when you start something, like you just like. You're like, oh, too hard, let's stop, and you've struggled with that your whole life. Yes. But, and so I really wanted you to have ownership over it. And then, you kind of got into the idea and then finally we pulled the trigger on, May 30th. Yeah. Or a couple days before then is when you really did your first, getting a call from Jada.
That was what I was looking at.
Jada, don't call us during a podcast.
Should I pick up?
No, you should not pick up. But Jada is from our Friends Watch The Chosen, by the way, if you've seen that series. She's our actual friend in real life. We don't actually hire her for those. So. But anyway, so we started the channel, and we had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea what YouTube could do. We had no idea how to use YouTube, how to upload properly, how to do a thumbnail, how to do titles or anything, the potential that could come with it, right? And so for about 10 months, we really struggled through doing a bunch of different things because we didn't know exactly what we want to talk about.
Right. We didn't have a niche. We did random things. My first intro video was like, because I needed to, and it's funny because I hadn't watched Sean Cannell, but I needed to just press record. Yeah, and that's something that he usually says. Yeah, so, I was like in my PJ shirt, like it's just a shirt, a regular. It was from when I played basketball. Yeah, mm-hmm. Like it has holes in it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I just decided, okay, I just need to do it. Yeah. So I did the first video, and then I asked you to do the second video, like intros of each other, because again, I was going under the influence that it was going to be like a lifestyle type of thing, because the Snipe Life, right? I wanted to be about our life.
Right.
You named it though. You're the creative one.
Yeah, I just thought it was a good name.
Yeah. And then we started digging into, we did that, what was that? What's it called when you make money? Side hustles.
Yeah, we did the side hustle series. That was after a while, though. Like, we did a bunch of random stuff. Like, there's a cooking video.
I love that video.
There's a couple different cooking videos, actually. And then there's, like, the random one where we're building my PC.
Yeah.
And
cleaning, organizing.
Like, an organizing video. We did the one where we redid the garage. That was, like, our cleaning series that we did.
We did a whole series, yeah.
Like a remodeling series, almost. Like,
yeah.
Just random stuff that because we just did not know what would hit. We didn't know what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, well, we're going to throw a bunch of stuff at the fan and see what sticks, right?
Yeah.
And so for 10 months, we were under 100 subscribers.
Yep.
So it was crazy because, like, we just were not growing at all.
No.
Like, if we got one subscriber, we were freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, look, we got a subscriber today. Like, you know, it was a great day, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously not getting very many views. Like, if we got 90 views on a video, I remember that was like the target for me. It was like 90 views. If we get that, that's good.
Yeah.
You know? And so I was really, you know, we were in this space of like about to quit.
Yeah.
Like, I remember having conversations with one of our patrons, Joe Rada, who was our real life friend, right?
Yeah.
One of the amazing, amazing people in our lives. And I remember talking with Joe, and I was like, yeah, man, we're trying these things, but if this next couple things don't work, like, I think we may talk about quitting, you know? And
I didn't know that.
because for me, it's like at some point it becomes a waste of our time, right? At some point it becomes like a time suck, right? Where it's like it's there's no reward for this, right? We're not reaching anybody. We're not, like, there's nobody that cares about what we're talking about. So why would we waste our time going into it, right? If it's not bringing any fruit. Because
you're a quitter.
Because obviously God has something else for us, right?
Sure.
But that's not what happened,
right?
We kept on going, and I think we would have kept on going for probably another year before.
The first thing that went really big
happened.
was that Imagine video.
Yeah, that was our first video over 1,000 views. Really big.
Yeah. For us, who's getting 90 views, like, it's definitely huge.
That was our first, and that was really big because Rick, who is the owner of Imagine Tours and Travels, he sent it out to a bunch of people, and he's got pretty big followings on different things like LinkedIn and all that, and so he he sent out that video to everybody so that they could see, because he really loved the video.
Right.
And that was a great video. If you are going to go to Israel, you could definitely check out that video. It's got a lot of good information, but it was kind of talking about the state of Israel in 2020 and what all that looks like. But that was our first video to get over 1,000, and that got us some subscribers, but not very many people stayed from that because we were still under 100 subscribers at that point, and not very many people, subscribed.
Not under 100.
Yeah, I think we were.
We were at 150 at one point.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe
we were at like 160 or something whenever we really hit. But anyway, it took us 10 months, right, from the start of our YouTube channel. And then at that 10-month mark, we decided that we were going to do a review of The Chosen Season 2, Episode 1.
Brandon decided he was going to do a review of The Chosen.
Yeah. Vanessa's like, I'm not sure what I think about that.
Yeah, because I didn't want to become The Chosen channel, but we kind of did become.
But at that time, you were like, whatever video you
I was open for it. Yeah.
Yeah, at that time, you were like, whatever video you want to do, like, if you think it's going to work, I trust you, basically.
Yeah.
And so, we did this first video, and I was adamant about it.
Yeah.
Because I knew that the season was coming out, and I was like, we're going to watch this episode, and the next day I'm going to have a video up. So that everybody can see our channel, and they see what we're reviewing. Yeah. Right? And then right after that video, it just hit.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't explode super hard, but it was like, this is something's here, right?
Yeah.
We started getting subscribers, and then over the next few weeks, it just blew up.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
At one point, we were getting like 150 subscribers a day.
Yeah.
Which to us is like, that's all the subscribers we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's crazy,
Yeah.
And then we coined the phrase, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
For us.
That's crazy.
It's like one of those that was easy buttons, but it's that crazy button. And so things
Dallas
just kept
came on the channel.
Yeah, things just kept on blowing up. and it kept on rolling over and over and over and over again. And we were like, how could it get better than this? Oh, wow, it did. How could it get better than this? Oh, wow, it did. And that's happening even to today, right?
Yeah.
Where we get invited out to the feeding of the 5,000 and we get to meet all these people, and we get amazing opportunities that we never thought we would ever have, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like things just kept on rolling and rolling and rolling, and God kept on getting better and better and better, and blessing and blessing and blessing, right?
Yeah.
And for us, it was overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What were your thoughts during that time when things started taking off and we started talking about The Chosen? We started, diving into what formed our YouTube channel into what it is.
Yeah. I think I still kind of struggle with like the overall identity, because for me it's the Snipe Life. That's our name, so it needs to be something good, right? And then Brandon had the idea of it's the Snipe Life, making dreams become your reality. I was like, oh man, that's amazing, you're super creative. And it's just like I still kind of want that to be the core, because for my why is always helping people. Like, I always want to mentor. I've always felt like I never had like those mentors, those people that were really pushing me and trying to see me succeed. So I always want to be that for people because I never had it. So doing that, like the building people up. We at one point had like this creators shout out type thing that we were doing, and I really love that. And maybe we'll get back to something like that. Maybe I do something on my own to create something like that, to build people up and mentor, and not necessarily teach, because I don't feel like I'm a good teacher, but like just encourage people. Yeah.
And maybe this podcast is part of that too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what this is. Maybe we have people like surrounded worship or whatever else, and we walk alongside them and we help them through situations, right?
I
think that's a large
helping
part
people
of it too.
Grow.
Just being open to walking alongside people and all of that. And I think we are doing that, though, just not in the way that you wanted, maybe in the way that God wants us to.
Don't say it that way. Yeah, of course. So anyways, as we were growing more and more into like the Snipe Life Chosen type stuff. Because even after season 1 finished, and then we still had kind of like an identity crisis. Yeah.
Because everything kind of dropped off.
Yeah. But I don't know if you want to say this, but like about that, what you heard God tell you, if you want to go into that.
Yeah. Well, I think it was during that whole season. Right. And something that like God really, I'm a late night person, right? So like for me, I think the clearest from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Like that's really when I do the majority of my thinking, my planning. I'll like plan my next day and be like, this is exactly what I have to do. This is how it's going to go. And I just think through everything during that time, right? It's when I'm clearest for whatever reason. And I remember being up at like 2 a.m. one time, and I felt like I had to write down in my notes, right? So I began writing, and like God was very clear, like very, very clear. The clearest that probably I've ever heard in my life. And it's like not an audible voice, but it was like, it was a very strong feeling, right? And so I just began writing down in my notes app on my phone. And essentially what it came down to is like, thanking God for what he's done, but then God kind of like speaking to me and saying, this is the people that I want you to reach. And he was really clear about it. He was like, you've heard the Great Commission. The Great Commission is, I want you to go into the earth, right? I want you to go to Jerusalem. I want you to go to Judea, and then I want you to go to the ends of the earth, right? But for you, is what he said to us is like, I want you to focus on Jerusalem. And what is Jerusalem? Jerusalem is the holy people, right? The people who think that they're good enough, but they're not, right? The people who think they understand, but they don't.
Like me in my past.
Right, exactly. Like you in your past. And so our mission as a channel, as a ministry, if you will, right, is to reach the people that have been Christians their whole life, quote unquote, right? Yeah. Or the people who truly believe that that they know Christ, but they're wrong. Like they just don't. They don't understand scripture.
They have a false gospel.
Yeah, they have a false gospel, right? Where they haven't actually read the Bible, right? They're just taking other people's word for it. They haven't actually sought into, who God wants them to be. They're just kind of taking other people's word and kind of running with it, right?
Yeah.
To where Christianity is just this fake thing for them. But they're still just as passionate about the wrong things as they should be about the right things.
Yeah.
Right? And so we've kind of come up with this archetype of person that we've been trying to reach, and it's been amazing to see. We've even met some of them in person at this point, where it's like, wow, God, like you've actually brought us to this place where this person exists and we have an impact on their lives, however big or small that is, And so for us now, our mission is to do that. It's to dive into that person's life and really impact them to the best of our ability.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get stuck?
Right. No. What do you mean?
Are you buffering?
No.
Oh.
I'm just letting this awkward moment sit for a second.
It's not awkward for me. We're weird.
Yeah.
I think, I can understand the path that we're on now, right? Mm-hmm. You've led me, right? Mm-hmm. And seeing how I don't like saying can use the chosen to...
No, I think 100% that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I still want to... Cause for me, my heart is usually younger people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even with youth group. So I still want that in some capacity.
Because you feel like there's more harvest there, or what?
I don't know. It's always been what I felt like with the youth girls.
You're drawn towards youth.
I'm always trying to pour into them, because again, those were the life years that I lived where I didn't have that and I needed it, So I didn't have a good youth leader. I didn't have these people, even our friend who's a basketball coach, hearing her coach compared to my basketball coach, not that she was amazing, right? And she did what she could, and she's planted some seeds of Christ within me, to the point where at one point when I was a Christian, I messaged her on Facebook, and I was like, thank you for putting this. Yeah. But anyway, what I'm saying is that our friend who's a coach, she's really pouring into these girls and trying to help them get into college and seeing the potential, seeing their potential and trying to make them be successful in this sport, right? I felt like I never had that. So even something as small as basketball, I felt like I was in basketball, I was in band, and I never really felt led. I never felt mentored. So I don't know. That's why I think.
Yeah, I think for us it's becoming more and more clear, right?
What?
Just what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And as God leads us, it's confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. Even getting to sit down with Daryl Eves, during the feeding of 5,000 and all of that.
Oh man, that was amazing.
Just being able to chat with him, that gave us clarity, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because
But he was thinking the same way I was thinking.
Sure,
so I was right.
Sure, in a lot of ways, yeah. But I think we're both on the right track, right?
Yeah.
And I say, don't worry about you saying
such a punk.
You are a punk, but it's okay. Like I was saying, I think, like you said, it's the chosen as a tool. We are using it, right? The chosen is a tool no matter what. That's what Dallas is creating it for. Right?
Yeah.
It's a tool to bring people to Christ.
Yeah.
And so of course we're going to use The Chosen, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't make it any less valuable.
Right.
I think The Chosen is an amazing, amazing TV show.
Yeah.
But as we say all the time, it's not scripture.
Exactly.
And so we have to lead them into that, right? Mm-hmm. And while The Chosen does that very well, I mean, for me, it's done that very well, right? Where I love diving deep into the scriptures and seeing, finding all these hidden details that I had never realized before, right? Mm-hmm. On top of that, it's we need to be the ones that dive even deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
And go really hard into the scriptures, our John series and all of that, and so that's really what we're planning to do in the future, right?
Yeah.
And then as we keep on, talking about The Chosen and diving into that, like today we're releasing a video about, the behind the scenes of the new set that they're doing, right? This huge, like $20 million set, it's like massive. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But the purpose of that video is not so that people can see the set and get excited about it. It's so that people can find our channel and then we can bring them into the scriptures, right? The scriptures is always the hero.
Yeah.
Right. And so as we dive into that, like God just keeps on clarifying things and showing us the way. And I think eventually, we'll go past The Chosen. Obviously, The Chosen is going to last forever. Yeah. But at that point, I truly believe that we'll have, a big enough audience, a good enough core
love us,
that will continue to grow this ministry, with people like Sandy Frankenstein, who's been amazing. With people like Timothy Kennedy, who's been an amazing part of the community, who, they're always there ready to serve and to help and to kick people out of the live stream if they're doing bad stuff. And, like the fact that every video that I put out, Sandy messages me, right? And I've mentioned this before, but Sandy will message me on like Facebook or whatever, and she'll be like, "Hey, this is so amazing. I really like this part about it. I really like this part about it. Hey, next time let's try this, blah, blah, blah,"
Which is amazing because your love language is words of affirmation. Right, so I feel like that's encouraging for you. Which Vanessa's not very good at. Stop.
But that's not the only reason I love it. I love it because of the ownership that she has over our channel.
Yeah.
Right? And she feels like this is a ministry that we are growing together. Yeah. Right? Which we are. Yeah. Because we couldn't do it without Sandy's.
Right.
We couldn't do it without Timothy's. We couldn't do it without the M-Lex noodles, right? Lamb chop as well, right? And there's a bunch of our legendary patrons and all of our patrons, even the Snipe Squad, right? The $5 patrons. You guys make up the majority of our Patreon and our YouTube members, right?
Yeah.
That Snipe Squad is amazing, and they're just as valuable, right, as the legends at the top. But there's some people that just have so much ownership in this community, and I love it. I love that we're able to create something like that. You know?
Let me also correct myself because I said they'll love us, and it really isn't about that. Like
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I say cringy stuff like that all the time, but like, I don't mean it. Like the whole point is to lead to Christ. And I never want that to get lost. And I want our foundation to be clear that, Jesus first, right? Yeah. To the glory of God alone. Everything, like everything we do is for the glory of God. And I never want to walk away from that or be like parallel to it. Like it needs to be that, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I think you understand that more than most people. I truly do. I think that your heart is so good. And God has gifted you in so many different ways. But anyway, YouTube channel, it's on the way right now. Just to date this episode, we're about to hit 10,000 subscribers, which is insane. If I look at the numbers, that puts us in the top 1% of YouTube creators, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Like it's just nuts to think about that. Like, we're close to the top 1% of that, and that is overwhelming. Crazy. I think it is crazy. That's crazy. It's definitely overwhelming, and it's like, God, what can you make of this? What will you continue to use us for? And I think on this podcast especially, I want us to not be afraid to talk about the things that He wants us to talk about. And I think as the world continues, as the United States continues in the path that it's on, like we will be continually challenged with that.
Yeah.
And as we speak truth, we'll be continually criticized and shut down, and maybe no one will ever see this podcast because of that. Canceled. But I don't think we should be afraid of that either.
Correct.
Whatever God wants us to do, I just want to be the voice that is shouting in the wilderness, prepare the way for the King. That's our job. And so as we prepare the way for the King, we look at creativity through the lens of Christianity, Yeah. We keep on doing that, and we keep on making it a priority to do that. So that's it, pretty much. That's us. I'm Brandon Snipe.
I'm Vanessa Snipe. And we are the Snipe Life.
Next time.
I was going to press a button.
So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. There's a lot more to us.
We're weird.
We'll share more later on. There's a lot of weird.
We're weird.
Inside stuff. And I'm about to mute you, dude. there's a bunch of like inside stuff and stuff that we're going to talk about as we go into this podcast. And I'm sure you'll learn a lot more about us.
My hands.
But
come on.
Okay, you want me to hold your hands?
Love ya.
They can't see it because it's on me right
Dang
now. Dang it. Okay, you're so weird, dude.
Okay, I'll stop.
All right. Anyway, so new podcast. I hope you like this episode. We're going to be having some more guests on, different people. Hopefully, we'll eventually get some people from The Chosen as well on this podcast. It'll be fun.
That would be cool.
Just get to talk about life and maybe stuff outside The Chosen as well. So we've got some amazing friends that have other YouTube channels and other things. Maybe we'll have Surrounded Worship on here, some different
Crack
people.
the egg.
That's you. That's just you.
And Taylor.
Yeah, we'll have Taylor on, I'm sure. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with us, for chilling. And yeah, hope you like this episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Oh, am I pressing a button?
You don't have to.
Is that the right one? Oh.